I hope everyone is awake and ready to play Stack It Like It's Hot, which is a game we invented last week.
That's great. I don't know it yet.
Yeah.
First time we're playing.
First time we're playing, but not first time we're talking about it. And I think there are a lot of talks, and I hope we have with us also a lot of founders that are wondering and talking about how on earth we're financing all these great ideas, right? Like I feel just walking around, there's so many great ideas, and we really want to take them to market. And we also, as investor, really want to make money out of it, and we want the companies to make money out of it. And it's been, I feel like, a question that's been also unsolved by non-climate investors. Anyways, just like PLANETech itself, also investing in climate is more fun and complex and messy and innovative, if you wish. So I'm really glad to have my dear friends with us. And thank you for coming to Israel, by the way. So the game is going to go like this. It's really easy. Yeah. Basically, this is a salad bowl that I brought from home. And we're each going to pick a capital stack component, define it very briefly, and also mention when is the timing that we're gonna do it. Okay, so is it super early stage? Is it prototype? Is it pilot? When is it on the TRL level kind of thing? And I have some questions, and we'll just start doing it. And before we start, maybe just a sentence about or more about each of you. Tell us what you're investing in. Who are you? For those who don't know.
So I have to start. That's unfair. So I'm Jan. I'm the founder and managing partner of Future Energy Ventures. We invest into early stage startups, which helps to do something against the climate crisis. Mostly we invest into technology, software, digital tools, which helps to accelerate the renewable wave, which is already happening in Europe and maybe also in a couple of months in other countries, and we invest in EV and all this kind of stuff. So happy to be here, and handing over to Sean.
Sean Abramson, also early stage, climate focused. Maybe the main difference from a lot of funds is we do a lot of hardware investing. It's not actually that much harder than software, just in case anyone's wondering. And we do probably half of what we've done is reducing carbon emissions, but about a third is adaptation and resilience, and we expect that to go up quite a bit more. And I guess we'll get into some of the details.
Yeah.
Yeah, during the game.
Yeah. Well, since you're already with the mic, okay. let's start.
All right. Let's see. So I have to dig down to the.
Oh, we're starting.
We're starting with the really fun one.
So project financing.
Okay, so what is project financing? So this is usually, if you're talking about projects, you have something that probably already works. So one way to think about it is a construction project. So there's usually going to be a piece of land somewhere, and you're going to install something. There'll be some construction, there'll be some manufactured components. And the financing part is the specialty companies or specialty finance entities that usually do the financing of projects. And the underwriting, I think, can vary. But generally for startups, I think the most important thing is, if you get to the point where you are getting project finance, you're very happy. You can probably stop taking money from people like me and Jan. You don't need venture capital as much because you probably have a real business that generates revenue. I think I'll probably stop there.
Just a quick question on that. When do companies need to start thinking about it?
So I think you can never be too early. I mean, when we're looking even at the earliest stage, we like to have a sense of what revenue will be like. So it could be that you are building something that another company will buy and use in a project, and that's fine. You should still have an idea of how they get financing. I think there are cases where there's sort of a fine line. We like to think between engineering risk and science risk, where engineering risk is something that you could probably prove out sufficiently so that a bank could underwrite a first project. If you're taking science risk, it's a little bit harder to see beyond you know, solving that and then you know, getting project finance. So a specific example, obviously solar, batteries, EVs, electric bikes. If you think about stuff that you could go out and buy today, those are generally things that could get project finance. A thing that might be, you know, if you could go and buy like a personal hydrogen production device or maybe a water from air device, some of those things are a little less mature and so maybe a little bit harder to get project finance for.
Okay. Yeah.
We started with the hard one.
I know. That's the, I don't know. I mean, how fun can it be? We're trying to make it, yeah.
So, customer.
Oh, that's a fun one also.
I guess not all of you can read it. Customer. So customers are really important from the first moment you start a startup, a venture. You should talk early to customers because they can finance you. They finance you with revenues because they buy your product. And you usually start with a small project and then you scale it up to much more. In our portfolio, we start usually helping companies to get a first project with 50, 100, 150K. And if it gets really to a great level, then these companies do 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million euros of revenues. And that means then they get with this 2, 4, 5, or 6 million or whatever revenues, get more financing from whatever, no? Could be debt or project finance or could be then other financing instruments. So really exciting customers.
It is a very exciting one, and also, of course, it provides much more than capital validation of the product, network distribution, etc. So this is a winner that we love.
Maybe worth pointing out that the relationship often between customers and project finance is that one way to prove that you deserve project finance is to show up with a customer who's ready to buy. That's often the easiest way to prove to a bank that you're investable.
Yeah, it also relates to our, over here we have like a bankability checklist thing. But also maybe a question that I've been asked, I think today and always, but also someone asked me, okay, but how do we get to the customers? And maybe what is it kind of like an ideal person within an organization that someone has to get to? Okay, great, we love it, amazing, we're praising customers. How do you get it? Maybe you have an example from your portfolio companies that did it right or got lucky.
I mean, the first thing we did in life and do in life, it's dating, no? It's about dating a lot of people. So it's just a human process. I mean, there's structures which can help you. For example, we are part of we founded a program in 2016 which is called Free Electrons. 10 utilities from the globe helping startups to get customers, becoming customers of that solution. So accelerator programs where you can scale, improve your technologies. I mean, there are a lot of things. So we all know how to date. So just using that strength, we can make it happen.
Nice. Okay, another one. Yeah.
I'm going to the bottom again. Offtakes.
Offtakes.
Wow, we're doing the really...
Well,
okay.
This is what the...
All right, so offtake. Offtake is a version of a customer relationship, right? Where a customer is agreeing to buy a certain amount of something. It could be electrons, it could be hydrogen. I think a lot of the time it would be considered a commodity, but that an offtake agreement is, the link back to financing is that usually a bank would say, the question that most finance, I keep saying bank, but sort of any lender would have will be, do I believe that at some point you can pay the interest, or that you can pay back the principal amount, or that if I actually in some cases want to own part of the company, that the company will increase in value so my shares will be worth more. And one way to get to that is to demonstrate you have a customer. So I can show up to an investor and say, oh, I've had lots of great customer conversations. We hear that a lot, especially early on. The best kind of result of a customer conversation is that they've given you money. And the next best thing that they can do is sign an agreement that says, if you meet certain conditions, and if you have a product that does certain things, that they will pay you for that thing. And so that's, I think, broadly what an offtake agreement looks like.
Yeah, so it's also kind of like an ideal, one of like the golden kind of component of our capital stack. Jan, do you have anything to add? I'm just diving more into that because I think it's something that is still unclear, but yet very desired. So maybe you have something to add.
Good question. So first, my question is, do we get a prize while we are doing that? Do I get a title, climate investor or so, after the session?
You get an offtake agreement.
Yes.
Yeah, I get an offtake agreement. No, I think offtake agreements, they helped us hugely in order to scale energy or renewable energy. If you think about renewable energy parks like wind parks, especially offshore, was a huge benefited from offtake agreements, and with offshore parks, we started really to create huge offtake agreements, billion euros of capital. So it's a really nice thing, but it's obviously a little bit later stage. Maybe hydrogen. If you think about hydrogen technologies, then we will discuss huge offtake agreements, or we're already discussing that, buying hydrogen from the Middle East or other locations. So yeah, really helpful.
Great.
By the way, can we pass on if we don't know the answer?
Yeah.
You can do that once.
Yes, we're making the rules as we go, so the answer is yes.
So the next thing is off-balance sheet leasing. So it's also late stage, and I'm an early stage investor, so I don't know so much about that. But I think, it's really relevant for scaling up, again, like more the classical renewable asset base. So if you put it out of your balance sheet and you use different financiers in order to organize the funding. And it's also valid for offshore, onshore, any kind of classical infrastructure. Maybe you don't need it so much if you think about early stage, but currently in Europe we have a huge discussion about how to finance electric vehicles, smaller rooftop solar panels, and so on and so forth. And what we create is off-balance sheet vehicles where we put a lot of the stuff into it. So then you have hundreds, thousands, micro credits and loans and whatever in it, and then you bring it off the balance of the startup or off the balance of the customer, and then you have a financing solution everyone needs, and we can scale the energy transition to the next level.
Can I ask, maybe Sean, you can answer this. What are some risks for the startups that are associated with such thing in comparison to on-balance sheet? Or, because...
I mean, I think off-balance sheet is the greatest financial magic trick ever invented. So it's interesting when people talk about the IRA in the US, the whole transferable tax equity, the thing that actually gets a lot of investors excited, is all linked to non-balance sheet vehicles. It's all these project-specific things. So one way to think about this is, we do this all the time, right? So if you rent your home or apartment, if you lease your car, when most people are given a choice, it doesn't always make sense to own anything, right? There's a lot of the time there's more overhead. And so this has worked throughout the economy really well. And in part the reason that it works is the core company that makes the thing. So let's say you are in the business of making solar panels. you kind of have a few choices. You can go out to the market and say, hey, I'm going to sell you a solar and battery system for $20,000, right? So the market for people who can afford $20,000 is people who have $20,000 in cash or people who could borrow $20,000. The thing that caused solar and storage to really take off in the US was when you could say, actually, you don't need to give me anything up front. You just need to sign an agreement that says that every month you will pay me $150 to $200, depending on the structure. And that is amazing, because what that looks like for the manufacturer of the startup and the solar system is they just got a whole new group of customers, right? In a practical sense, what we see is you can increase your market size 2 to 3 times just with this trick, if you like. And so it's another way to think about the product, because you don't have to pay up front. You can pay over time. But what it looks like from the startup's perspective is 2 to 3 times the revenue. And so that we love this. Like, I think we actually look very early on if there's a pathway for companies to get to exactly this structure. And I think the most interesting thing is we tend to focus on venture as a big asset class where we have, let's say, funds that are $1 billion and everyone gets excited. The people who deploy into off-balance sheets, $1 billion off-balance sheet structure is like a thing that you do every few weeks. It's such a small amount of money. So we think it's probably the way that most things in climate eventually get financed. If you're going to get to material scale where you're getting tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of dollars into a specific asset, it's happening through off-balance sheet structures.
Yes, and I really want to stress also, you've mentioned looking if there is a path for that, and I think it's something we should, as investors and as founders, think from very, very early on. And this is also, also supporting, speaking of bankability checklist and all of that, you come so much stronger to that. So looking for these paths, I think can maybe open new creative ways for the company. Ready for another one?
Is it me?
Yeah. Sorry, it's been a long day.
Asset finance. So everything is really closed, no? Did you made it up? No.
No.
Just kidding. No.
I think you said asset finance.
Asset
I
finance.
didn't realize we were actually going to play.
Oh, you thought.
So Sean already explained it. No, you have an asset and you get the finance for it. Usually the finance is equity and debt. It's also a little bit more later stage. Maybe we get into this new funding models we've discussed before, like PV and EVs and batteries and so on and so forth. It's a really great thing, and you need to be aware of that, especially if you scale your startup. But really early stage, you start with other stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've seen a few early stage, but it's not for the startups products. So for example, there are a lot of robotics companies. If you wanted to get an industrial robot from someone like ABB, they're not a sponsor. They generally will have a program whereby you don't buy the robot from them. You can pay them a monthly amount, and if the startup fails, you hope it doesn't, they come and pick up their robot and someone else gets to use it.
Okay. We have a few more left and a few more minutes. We're going to complete all of it.
Is there one that you really want to see? Can we?
No, I love all
This one looks-
Is this one with the red collar?
Yeah.
Oh, the bankability checklist.
Okay.
Do we get a prize for this one?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know why it became the desired one, but yeah, maybe top 3 tips or top 3 on the checklist that a founder should keep in mind on the road to bankability.
I mean, most of the ways that I think this gets expressed is there's going to be an analyst somewhere who has to build an Excel model. And in that Excel model are some assumptions. And bankability is about making those assumptions non-controversial. Meaning, if you say that you can produce a certain amount of energy, let's say every week, that range should account for the weather and it should account for cloud cover and things like that. But there shouldn't be a lot of, let's say, debate about the assumptions that go into that spreadsheet. And the more you can sort of shrink the range of things, the easier it is to make things bankable. So for example, when we think about technology risk, it's not that you think the technology is going to fail. It's that there could be a question about a new device. Let's say you've got a new way to produce hydrogen. There could be a question about whether the device will work for 1,000 hours or 100,000 hours. If you put that in the spreadsheet's going to break, right? It's just the range is too large. And so bankability, I think for us is generally have something where, maybe you've run the device for years and you've got third-party validation, and because you've shipped 1,000 of them that typically they last 50,000 hours. And then the spreadsheet is, there's less variation.
Yeah, to just clear the questions that you predict and kind of, So we're short on time, so we have two components that are important. Non-dilutives and debt and venture debt. So maybe you can start, and share a bit of like the non-dilutive landscape. And I think also a lot of questions that I hear are, okay, great, we know there is an abundance of non-dilutives, EU, IRA, we know of companies who got them. How do you even hear about them? And also maybe some of what you see in Europe, what you see in the US. I think it will be good for us to hear.
I told you that's not my question.
It's not? Okay,
no.
You can pass. It's a
No.
yeah.
Maybe Europe and you, US, isn't it? So, in Europe we have the Green Deal. It's the European deal. It's a lot of money. I think the topic in Europe is the complexity of the system. So different countries, different strategies and rules how to supply the capital to the market. It's a very rich program for any kind of startups. It starts from the very, very beginning. You have an idea and you wanted to develop a technology, like 25,000 and it gets then up to multi-million euro funding, like of companies which are grown up and they need to set up a production facility and whatever. So we have financing instrument, you get finance, you get subsidies, you get grants, everything is in it. Financing is coming with preferential interest rates or better interest rates or any kind of support. Or even then on the equity side, you have a lot of investors. European Investment Fund, I think it's the most well-known investor in Europe, which is just sponsoring all these companies, helping Europe to become green.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. The U.S. version of this is it shouldn't surprise anyone, but it's tax structuring. So by definition, you have to go to someone who is very knowledgeable, but also very expensive by the hour to explain to you what's happening. No, I'm kidding. Eventually, you have to do that. But in the beginning, I would say the earliest stages, they are sort of classic research grants. So things like the Innovation Authority would do here, you can do in the US at the federal government level, but you can also do at the state level. And the biggest states in the US tend to be, California, Massachusetts, New York. You can sort of follow depending on Republican or Democrat. Democratic states tend to have more grants, surprise, surprise, and high taxes. And as you get further along, I think a lot of the access becomes, I want to say, like post-financial crisis, the things that you would expect banks to do, they don't do anymore, right? So like most startups are not going to their local bank or community bank or a larger, international brand. They are usually going to family offices, or they're going to hedge funds, or they're going to some private lender who are typically the people who are underwriting. And eventually, again, if you graduate to the point of doing things like off-balance sheet, the IRA, the transferable tax equity, hopefully it's not a thing that anyone ever needs to understand. But if you can get to the point where you can lease anything in your business, you can probably figure out a way to use transferable tax equity. And the only reason it's important to everyone, it essentially makes it almost guarantees returns for the investors, which is why they love that sort of mechanism so much. So yeah, some complexity, but I think early on, a lot of the systems look the same. It's grants and then it's loans. It's a function of having customers that you can borrow against the cash, and eventually you get to the really fun, complex stuff. And by the way, by the time you are eligible for things like transferable tax equity, what's amazing is the bankers who have access and knowledge about that will find you. You don't have to worry. They have a way of finding you.
Well, we still have a lot to discuss, like cap tables, debt, venture debt, but I think we'll leave it for the next chat. Just to wrap up, in one sentence, one tip for founders while planning the capital stack, because I think planning is a key word here. Sean?
I think when you plan fundraising, I think the bad habit in venture capital is that we have this sequence of pre-seed and seed extension, and then A, B, C, D, E. You have the whole alphabet. Stop the alphabet at B. Just assume that after B there's no more alphabet, and then figure out how you would fund the business. And I think most people would be very surprised that actually you don't actually need to do anything after B. But it's just a worthwhile exercise to figure out where else you can get cash from to fund your business.
Great. Jan?
Yeah, even start to reach out to investors when you don't raise money. So you should start as early as you can, just with your first product, with your ideas, just to create an ecosystem of investors which are then competing to be part of your team. So it's not about fundraising, it's just starting really early to get to know people.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Can't wait for our next chat. Thank you, everyone.